I sent my parents money every month, thinking I was the good daughter they bragged about. Then I overheard my aunt say, "She's too stupid to know they're just using her." So I stopped, and my dad showed up screaming, "You ungrateful brat." The last time I felt truly close to my parents, I was 25 and boarding a Greyhound to LA for my first real job. My mom hugged me like she was sending me off to war. My dad slapped my shoulder and called me a big shot. It felt like a turning point. I promised myself I'd do everything I could to make them proud and help them the way they helped me. 10 years later, I'd kept that promise. Every month, I wired money home without fail. I worked my way up to a senior accounting position at a mid-sized firm in downtown LA. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough that $1,200 a month didn't sting too badly, at least not at first. My parents always told me the money helped with rent, utilities, food, and college expenses for my youngest brother, Rico. My older brother, Julian, was already out of the house and in the Coast Guard, so I didn't worry about him. There was always some new expense: a leaking roof, an increase in property taxes, a broken-down car. And every time I hesitated or asked questions, my mom would say things like, "We never asked you for anything growing up," or "You're not selfish like some people's kids." I took that as praise. I took all of it, every guilt-soaked compliment and every subtle manipulation, as signs of love. My friends used to say I was too generous, but I brushed it off. I was the daughter who made it out. I owed them. Then came my 34th birthday. I wasn't going to celebrate it big, but my Aunt Mariella insisted on throwing a barbecue in her backyard in Dolly City. I hadn't seen most of my extended family in over a year, so I thought, why not? I got there late because I had to work late. My job had been especially stressful those weeks, but I didn't want to cancel on everyone. I figured I could stay for an hour or two, make small talk, and drive back to LA the next morning. When I arrived, the backyard was packed with people: cousins, neighbors, people I barely remembered from childhood. My mom ran up and gave me a hug, gushing about how proud she was of me. My dad lifted his beer and said, "Everyone, the star of the show is here." I laughed, said thank you, and slipped inside the house to use the bathroom. That's when I heard it. Two voices just outside the cracked bathroom window, my Aunt Mariella and another woman I couldn't place. "I don't know how she doesn't see it," one of them said. Then Mariella's voice, "Isla's too stupid to know they're just using her." The other woman chuckled. "Marcos hasn't worked in years, right?" "Nope," Mariella replied. "Tell everyone he's retired. But really, he just collects that money she sends and sits around. Thea too. And they love telling people what a good daughter she is, makes them look holy." I stood frozen. Not angry, just hollow. I didn't finish using the bathroom. I didn't go back to the party. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove straight back to LA. For the next few days, I told myself I must have misheard. Maybe they were joking. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But the more I thought about it, the more things didn't add up. Julian once mentioned that Dad wasn't working anymore, but when I asked my mom about it, she brushed it off, said, "He's just between contracts." That was 2 years ago. Rico had dropped out of college last spring after failing most of his classes. When I asked how he was doing, my mom said he was exploring his options. But I was still told the money was helping cover his tuition. So I tested a theory. I didn't send the money that month. Not even a day went by before my mom texted, "Hi, honey, just checking. Did something happen with the bank transfer?" I replied that I had some surprise expenses and needed to hold off just for the month. "Oh, okay, I hope everything's all right. Love you." No accusations, no anger, but the warmth felt rehearsed. 2 days later, another text. "Dad wanted to check in, he's worried about you. Everything okay at work?" Again, I said I was fine, just budgeting. Then silence. A week passed. Then another. Then, early on a Saturday morning, someone started pounding on my apartment door in Koreatown. I peeked through the peephole and saw my father. He was red-faced, eyes wild. I opened the door halfway. "What are you doing here?" His voice boomed into the hallway. "What's this crap about not sending money anymore?" I stepped back. "You came all the way from San Francisco for this." He shoved the door fully open. "Don't act like you don't know what you're doing. We counted on that money. You don't get to just stop without telling us." I couldn't even speak. "I gave you everything," he shouted. "Food, clothes, a home. You wouldn't have a fancy job if we hadn't sacrificed." I sent you money for 10 years, I said, finally finding my voice. And you never once told me the truth. What truth? I heard Mariella at the party. She said you and Mom have been lying to me, that you haven't worked in years, that you're using me. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. You said Rico was in college, he dropped out. You said it was for groceries and bills, but I've been paying your whole lifestyle. His face twisted. So what? You're our daughter. That's what families do. You wouldn't have anything without us. That was the last thing he said before I told him to leave. After I closed the door on my father, I just stood there for a long time, my back pressed against it like I was bracing for him to kick it back open. He didn't. After a few minutes, I heard the elevator ding and the distant echo of his boots down the hallway. That was it, no follow-up text, no apology, no attempt at explanation. I didn't cry right away. I think I was too stunned, too heavy with a grief I couldn't even name yet. It felt like I'd lost something, not my parents exactly, but maybe the illusion I'd carried all these years. The belief that they were always honest with me, that our love was mutual and unconditional, that I hadn't had a paycheck with a pulse. I didn't go to work that Monday. I told HR I needed a personal day, then I just stayed in bed. I didn't even touch my phone. I was exhausted, not from the confrontation, but from the years of pretending it all made sense. A few days later, Julian called. We'd never been especially close, but he had this way of checking in that didn't feel intrusive. Just a "hey, you good?" in a low, steady voice. I almost didn't answer, but something told me he already knew something had happened. Dad came back from LA in a rage, he said, not even waiting for me to say hello. Said you slammed the door in his face. I sighed. Did he tell you why he showed up? Something about you cutting them off. He made it sound like you betrayed them. I gave a bitter laugh. I was sending them over $1,000 a month, Julian, for years, and they've been lying about everything. I found out at my birthday party, Mariella was talking about how I'm too stupid to know they're just using me. Julian was quiet for a moment. I'm not surprised, he finally said. I sat up. You knew. I didn't know all of it, he said carefully. But I knew Rico dropped out. I knew Dad hasn't worked since 2020. I also knew you were sending money, and they never wanted you to stop. That's why they downplayed everything. It hit me harder than I expected. The silence from him all these years. I wasn't even mad at him, just sad. Sad that no one, not even my own brother, thought I deserved the truth. Why didn't you tell me? Because, I guess I thought you wanted to help, and maybe part of me figured it wasn't my place. I don't know. I should have said something. We talked for a while longer. He didn't try to defend them. He just listened, which helped more than he probably realized. At one point, he even said, "You don't owe them your life, Isla." And maybe I needed to hear that from someone else. That it was okay to stop. Over the next few weeks, I kept myself busy. I poured myself into work. I prepared a meal. I reorganized my closet. All the mindless tasks that keep grief from swallowing you whole. But in the quiet moments, those gaps between obligations, I kept circling the same thought. Was it me? Was I stupid for believing them? Did I want to be seen as good so badly that I ignored every red flag? I started therapy around this time. I'd been meaning to for years, always too busy to commit. But now, I can't pretend anymore. I needed help unpacking the emotional cargo I'd been dragging for over a decade. My therapist, Dr. Frey, was a calm, older woman with the kind of voice that made you slow down without realizing it. On our second session, she asked me a question that stuck with me. Do you think your worth was tied to what you gave them? It stopped me cold. Because yes, I did. In my family, love was shown through sacrifice. My mom wore old shoes so I could buy books for school. My dad worked weekends to afford my field trips. I internalized that, and as an adult, I reversed the roles. I thought the more I gave, the more I was loved. But what happens when that love is conditional? When the giving stops and so does the warmth? It took me weeks to come to terms with it, and I'm still not done. But at some point, I started to shift from asking, why did they use me? To why did I let them? That's not to say it was my fault. But part of healing, I've learned, is understanding your own patterns. I didn't speak to my parents again for almost 2 months after my dad's outburst. I think they were waiting for me to feel guilty, to cave and call. But I didn't. Then, one morning in late February, I got a voicemail from my mom. Her voice was softer than usual. No guilt tripping, no snide remarks. Hi, sweetie. I hope you're doing okay. I miss you. We miss you. Call me when you can, please. I didn't call her back, not immediately. Instead, I replayed that message over and over, trying to figure out if it was sincere or just a new tactic. Around that time, I went back through my old bank records, years of transfers labeled family and monthly help. I added up the total. Over 10 years, I had sent them just under $128,000. 128,000. That was a down payment on a house, a startup fund, a second degree, and I had given it away thinking it was love. It wasn't even the money that made me cry. It was the idea that none of them, not even my mother, had ever told me, "You've done enough, take care of yourself now." Not once. I started sleeping better once I stopped wondering if I'd made a mistake. Because the truth is, I had made many. But the bigger mistake would have been continuing to live in denial. The funny thing is, once the money stopped and I went quiet, things started shifting back home. Julian called again to tell me Rico had started working part-time at a local repair shop. He's not proud of it, Julian said. But it's the first time he's earned his own money in over a year. Apparently, they were struggling, really struggling. Without my help, they couldn't keep up with rent and utilities. They had to borrow from my uncle. They were talking about selling the house. A part of me felt relief, not because they were struggling, but because they were finally facing reality. No more safety net, no more illusion of endless support, just consequences. I didn't send them a dime. About 3 weeks after my mom left that voicemail, I got a text from my cousin Rena. We weren't especially close growing up, but she was always kind to me, one of the few people in the family who didn't treat me like an ATM with a pulse. She wrote, "Hey Isla, I don't want to stir the pot, but my mom, Aunt Mariella, is telling people that you've turned into some LA snob who thinks she's too good for her family. Just thought you should know." I wasn't surprised. It made sense. If they couldn't control me with guilt anymore, they'd try shame. And if that didn't work, they'd rewrite the narrative entirely. Make me the villain in their version of events. But here's the thing, I didn't care, not like before. That was a weird revelation. For most of my life, my family's opinion of me felt central, almost like my personality was built around making sure I wasn't a disappointment to them. Suddenly realizing I didn't care what they whispered behind my back was like pulling off a too-tight jacket and realizing I could finally breathe. Still, Rena's message gave me something important: validation. Someone else saw it. Someone else knew this wasn't about me being selfish. That same night, I sat down and started writing a letter. Not to send, just to get the words out. I wrote everything I would have said to my parents if I knew they'd actually listen. I wrote about being 10 and scared of asking for new shoes because I knew we didn't have money. I wrote about being 22 and skipping meals to make my rent on a junior accountant's salary, all while sending them half of what I earned. I wrote about how their praise turned into expectation, and how "we're so proud of you" always carried the silent add-on, "so don't stop helping us." I wrote until my hand cramped. Then I folded it up, put it in an envelope, and tucked it away in a drawer. It helped, just seeing the truth on paper. A few days later, I ran into Rico's Instagram page. He'd made it public again. For the first time in years, there were photos of him at work. A few selfies at a job site, one captioned, "Not glamorous, but it's mine." I stared at that post longer than I should have. It stirred something in me, hope maybe, anger too. But mostly this strange, unshakable sadness. Was that all it took? Me saying no? What if I'd stopped years ago? Would things have changed sooner? Would my family have stood up on their own instead of leaning on me like I was a crutch? I'll never know. A week later, I answered a call from my mom. I don't know why. Maybe I felt ready. Maybe I wanted closure. Her voice was tentative at first. "Hi, baby, how are you?" She always called me baby when she wanted something or when she was trying to disarm me. But there was something softer this time, not fake soft, worn down soft. I didn't launch into accusations. I just said, "I'm okay. You." She told me they were managing. She used that word like it tasted sour in her mouth. I could read between the lines. Things were tight. Maybe they had to cut cable or sell something. I didn't ask for details. Then she said, "I miss our talks." I didn't answer right away. "I do too," I admitted, and I meant it. We used to talk. About books, about neighbors, about little things. That was real. But I wasn't going to pretend nothing happened. "I need to know something," I said. "Did you ever think I was going to just keep sending money forever?" There was a long pause. Then she said, "We didn't think it would go on forever. We just got used to it. Used to it, like my help had become background noise. We should have talked to you, told you the truth," she added. That was the first time she admitted it, that they hadn't been honest. Maybe I wasn't the crazy one for walking away. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I just felt betrayed," I said. "Not because you needed help, but because you didn't trust me enough to be honest." "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry. It wasn't a magical fix. No violins in the background, just two women on opposite sides of a phone call trying to tiptoe through the damage. We talked for about an hour that night. Not everything was resolved, but something shifted. Something cracked open. Not long after, I got a text from Rico. It just said, 'Hey, I know I was a jerk before. Thanks for what you did. I'm trying now.' I didn't know what to say back, so I just wrote, 'Good. Keep trying.' He liked the message and didn't say more, and that was okay. Since then, I've kept my distance, emotionally and financially. I still talk to my mom sometimes, and Julian checks in every now and then. But I haven't resumed the payments. I don't think I ever will. Some part of me is still grieving the version of my family I thought I had. But another part is slowly building something stronger: boundaries, self-respect, and maybe even a better relationship with myself. I haven't forgiven everything yet. I don't even know if I will. But I'm not angry the way I was before. I'm just awake now. In the weeks following that call with my mom and that short, awkward text from Rico, I stayed quiet. No grand gestures. No family-wide email thread. Just silence and space. My therapist helped me a lot during this time. We started talking not just about boundaries, but about resentment. What happens when you keep giving until you're empty and people keep talking until they don't even notice you've disappeared? One day she asked, "What would justice look like to you? Not revenge, not cruelty, but justice." That stuck with me. Because for so long, I'd imagined some huge confrontation where I aired every lie, every manipulation, and left them sobbing in realization. But I didn't want that. I wanted freedom. I wanted my energy back. And yeah, a little part of me still wanted them to feel it, to sit in what they'd done. Not in a vengeful way, in a reality check way. So I made a plan. It started with paperwork. I contacted a financial advisor I'd met through work. With his help, I opened a new investment account and began redirecting the $1,200 I used to send to my parents every month into a personal savings portfolio. I labeled the account "The Life They Didn't Build." Every month, when I made that transfer, it felt like reclaiming something that had been siphoned away for years. But that wasn't enough. I wanted them to understand, not just privately but publicly, that their actions had consequences. A few months later, a childhood friend of mine, Mila, reached out. She still lived in the Bay Area and ran a small local blog focused on financial empowerment, especially for women of color. We caught up over Zoom one evening, and I told her a condensed version of what happened. She listened quietly, then said, "You should write about this. People need to hear it." I hesitated. I didn't want to humiliate my family. I wasn't interested in revenge porn. But the idea of telling my story my way started to take root. So I did. Under a pseudonym, I wrote an essay for her blog. I changed the names, the city, even a few identifying details, but the core truth was there. How I gave and gave and gave until I nearly forgot who I was. How financial abuse doesn't always look like screaming or stealing. It sometimes looks like compliments laced with control. The piece went viral. Thousands of shares. Hundreds of comments. People thanking me. People recognized themselves. People waking up. Mila sent me a screenshot a few weeks later. One of my relatives had shared the post on Facebook, writing, "This sounds just like what Isla went through. So heartbreaking." They didn't know it was me. That made me laugh harder than I had in months. And then, the cherry on top. I got a call from a nonprofit I'd once donated to in my parents' name. They were offering a free financial literacy workshop in the Bay Area and wanted to know if I'd be willing to speak at the event anonymously, just sharing my experience. At first, I was hesitant, but then I realized this was it. This was my moment, not to punish but to redirect, to reclaim, so I did. I spoke at the event. They filmed it, again with identifying details removed, and uploaded it to YouTube. A few weeks later, my mom called me. Not angry, not manipulative, just tired. "I saw the video," she said. "I didn't say anything." "You're right," she added. "About all of it. I waited. I think we lost you, she said. Not because of money, but because we didn't see what we were doing. And then she said something I never, ever thought I'd hear from either of them. We're ashamed, and I'm sorry. That apology, sincere, unforced, and clean, was more satisfying than anything I could have engineered. It wasn't just that they felt guilt. It was that they finally acknowledged the harm. That they saw me as a person, not a paycheck. That they realized they did this to themselves. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw the numbers in their faces. I just listened. Eventually, we talked more. We're not close now, but we talk. I don't send money, they never ask. Rico got a full-time job and moved out. Julian and I text now and then. He said, "You lit the match that forced everyone to wake up." I liked that. As for me, I moved into a new apartment, smaller but mine. I have a little reading nook by the window where I sit and journal, or just sip coffee and stare at the sky. That savings account I created. It's now got over $20,000 in it. Every time I look at it, I smile. Because that's the quietest revenge of all. I got my life back, and they had to rebuild theirs without me.